All right, let's just jump right in. We throw these labels around all the time, right? Boomer, millennial, zoomer. But they're way more than just slang. Think of each one as a chapter in a much bigger story. A story about us, shaped by huge events like wars, massive tech leaps, and big cultural shifts. So, why do we even bother with these labels? Do they actually matter? Well, here's a cool way to think about it. History is kind of like a giant relay race. Each generation gets the baton, looks at the world the previous one left behind, and just reacts. So when we dig into these names, we're not just talking about dates. We're actually starting to understand the huge forces that shaped our world and, yeah, even our own lives. In our story, well, it kicks off with a few generations that were basically forged in fire. We're talking about global war, economic collapse, the whole nine yards. These are the people who stared down some of the 20th century's absolute darkest moments. First up, you've got the lost generation. I mean, can you even imagine? You come of age, and what's waiting for you? The unbelievable brutality of World War I. Then, right after that, a global pandemic sweeps through. And just when you think it can't get any worse, boom, the entire world economy just collapses. It was just one hit after another, a real trial by fire. But here's the thing, even in the middle of all that staggering loss, you started to see these sparks of huge change. People needed an escape, right? So they packed into theaters to see the brand new magic of movies. And you had these incredible new figures, like the Flapper, who just completely defied the old social rules. I mean, their world had been turned totally upside down, so they were rewriting the rulebook. Now, the next generation to grab that baton, they'd be defined by another world war, and by one single jaw-dropping number, 16 million. That's how many Americans, mostly from the group we now call the Greatest Generation, served in World War II. That single experience, that shared sacrifice, it defined everything about them. But here's the wild part. While this massive war was raging overseas, something else was happening back home. A full-blown cultural explosion. This was the golden age of Hollywood. It was the era of jazz and swing music that you could hear everywhere. The radio became the heart of the home, with millions of people gathering around to listen to FDR's fireside chats. And hey, this is when Superman and Batman showed up. It's this crazy dual reality. They were fighting tyranny on a global scale and at the exact same time creating some of America's most iconic, long-lasting culture. And following them, the silent generation. Now, think about what they grew up with. They saw the incredible sacrifices their parents made, and now they're facing this new, terrifying threat, the Cold War. So their whole mindset, their ethos, became pretty clear. Keep your head down, work hard, and please don't rock the boat. The goal wasn't to tear down the system, it was to succeed inside of it. People saw them as cautious, maybe even a little conformist, but you know what? The stability they built laid the groundwork for everything that came next. Okay, and that brings us to the post-war revolution. The constant crisis mode starts to fade out, and what rushes in to take its place? This just unprecedented wave of optimism, money, and yeah, a whole lot of rebellion. It's an era that would completely redraw the map of society. And you could feel this new optimism everywhere. For the first time in ages, after years of war and depression, people felt secure enough to start big families. And the result, as you can see, was this massive, massive spike in births. This wasn't just another generation. It was a demographic tidal wave. We call them the baby boomers. And just like that, the boomers became the center of the universe. The economy bent over backwards for them, making things that used to be luxuries, like TVs, just standard. They had their own revolutionary soundtrack, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan. And in a total 180 from their parents' quiet conformity, they pushed for radical change. This led to these huge, fierce battles over civil rights and the Vietnam War, and honestly, that created some of the deep political divides we're still dealing with today. So after all that noise and upheaval, what comes next? You guessed it, a reaction. Generation X. As birth rates started to drop and society changed again, a totally new kind of childhood started to pop up. They got a nickname for it, the latchkey generation. These were the kids who came home from school, took a key from under the mat, and let themselves into an empty house. And what does that kind of childhood create? A fierce, almost stubborn independence. Yeah, they were sometimes stereotyped as cynical slackers, but let's be real. This was the generation of entrepreneurs. That self-reliance they learned in those quiet afternoons, that's what fueled them to build the companies that literally built the internet age as we know it. We're talking Google, Amazon, YouTube.
That individualism ended up being this incredibly powerful, creative, and economic force.
And that brings us to the final chapter, at least for now. We're talking about the generations whose entire reality from day one has been filtered through a screen, the children of the internet.
Millennials are just a fascinating paradox, aren't they? On one hand, they were the pioneers, the first to really grow up with the internet, which made them the first truly global generation, connected in ways no one had ever been before. But there was a catch. That digital-first life came with a really heavy price tag. They walked into the job market right as the economy slowed down, buried under a mountain of student debt. It's why you hear them called the unluckiest generation.
And that right there creates this super important difference between them and the next group. See, millennials adapted to the internet as it was growing up. Many of them remember the screech of a dial-up modem. But Gen Z, they've never known a world without it. They were born into a world that was already running on high-speed internet and powered by complex algorithms.
And that has shaped them profoundly. Think about their formative years. It's been a nonstop whirlwind of political change, huge social justice movements, and a global pandemic. They live and breathe the attention economy, a world where your eyeballs are the most valuable currency. This makes things like freelance work or being an influencer totally legitimate career paths. That entrepreneurial spirit we saw in Gen X, it's back, but this time it's got a digital, decentralized, global twist.
And that leaves us with the babies and toddlers of today, Generation Alpha. So what happens when your first babysitter is an iPad and your playmate is an AI? They are the true digital natives. We are just getting the first glimpse of the kind of world they're going to build, or maybe the world they'll react against. So after that sprint through, 100 years of history, what's the big takeaway here? Where is this whole relay race heading next? Well, if there's one pattern that's crystal clear, it's this. Every single generation is, in some way, a reaction to the one that came before. The boomers reacted against the silent generation's quiet conformity. Gen X reacted against the boomers' noise. So the real question isn't just about the past, it's about right now. It's about the future. When you look at the world we have all had a hand in creating, what's the next reaction going to be?